Hey, what is going on, everybody out there? This is Jakejames Lugo. Welcome to the channel and welcome to a brand new episode of JJ's One Man Podcast. This is like my one man show, my one man kind of like monologue. Just imagine me like sitting on a stool with one spotlight on me, like eating a Pocky or something and just talking with you guys about all types of subjects and all types of different things, YouTube, gaming, or otherwise. There's a whole bunch of stuff to really dive into, and I know there's a lot of different things that have been going on as of late, especially in the news. Again, there's a lot of crazy stuff that's going on, and probably I'll get to all that stuff eventually. But today I wanted to talk about a couple things that were not only tangential to my E3 2019 trip, but also some stuff that's been on my mind for quite some time. It's been a while since I've really kind of like spoken openly about this type of stuff, but I wanted to bring it to you guys for this episode. So what am I really referring to, outside of what you've probably seen in the title of this video? Basically, I want to talk a little bit about gaming journalist beef. I want to talk about beef, okay? Not rap beef, not like, video game beef, because even though video game beef could be really fun here and there, especially if you go online and you're playing against people of all types of like, different genres and all over the world and such. No, I want to talk about the beef that we usually see on Twitter. We usually see it in articles. We see it in sometimes YouTube videos, podcasts, all over the place. We see all different types of beef related to games journalists. Now these days, I want to say over the last like maybe about 5, 6, maybe 7 years, give or take, given a lot of stuff that's happened in the news, with a lot of different outlets reporting on stuff. Again, we're not going to get into the specifics of that, but I really want to focus on some of the things that are related to the beef. Now, when I usually say game journalist beef, I'm not just referring to the stuff that they really have with YouTubers. That's pretty much a lot of the stuff that gets talked about a lot. And I'll probably get to that one day, especially in light of recent events. But I want to talk about gaming journalist beef amongst each other. As someone that is a games journalist, as someone that is part of this industry, who's getting close to a decade being part of the games industry and being a games media person, an online influencer, a personality in gaming, and a games journalist, all those different titles put together. I do have some opinions about that. I do have some experiences with that to share, as well as also just some good perspective and food for thought. Because I see a lot of people online talk about games journalists or just refer to them or say all these like many different things about them, but they're not really part of the field. They're not really part of that actual aspect of the games industry. It might be YouTubers, it might be podcasters, it might be influencers commenting on this stuff, but they're really just commenting in order to get a leg up on everybody else. They're commenting to take a pop shot at people that are part of outlets and part of like major websites and all this other different stuff. A lot of different things I've talked about in the past. You could find any one of my other videos or my JJ's One Man Podcast episodes where I've touched on different stuff like that. But really, let's talk more about the actual games journalists themselves. In my career thus far, in my time being part of the games industry, I've had a couple little instances here and there that has not been really fun. That's actually been kind of terrible. That's been really annoying, for lack of a better word. And it usually comes from either a failure to communicate, a misunderstanding, or just someone just acting really rude one day. Now, I know that sounds a little cheesy. I know that sounds a little bit maybe conceited, coming from my own perspective, because I can only really give my own perspective and my own thoughts on this type of stuff. But really, looking back on it now, a lot of the time where I usually see a lot of problems that usually pop up on social media is usually one of those three things that are the cause of it. I mean, we see a lot of different people have disagreements online, and for whatever reason, some people just feel like you can't disagree with them. You can't have a different perspective. You can't have a different opinion unless it's part of theirs, or unless it's something that agrees with their own, or it's tangential to their own. And I think that's really messed up. And usually you see a lot of people, again, especially on social media, that usually say and do things just for the spectacle of it. They're just trying to get attention or trying to get a rise out of other people just to support them. You see that a lot lately with some of the different news articles that have been coming out about YouTubers. Again, we won't touch on that now. We'll talk about that in a separate video one day. But getting back to the games journalist, getting back to my own personal experience with this, one of the things that I find very annoying and very, very kind of, terrible, and it kind of sucks for a lot of people, especially when they're trying to get into the industry, is that sometimes a lot of the different like shocking slash, antsy slash, I guess you could say problematic people on Twitter that sometimes a lot of different, people and viewers and, just audience members really refer to, usually are the people that are in, positions that are, to make decisions, positions to make decisions. I know that's a little bit of like a tongue twister there. Try saying that 5 times fast, right? But anyway, Okay, usually these people are the ones that are usually causing a ruckus, and usually the ones that are causing beef amongst different journalists in the industry are usually the ones that are making decisions at certain outlets, or at least having the ability to influence certain people that have the ability to make decisions at certain outlets. And I think that's really terrible, because sometimes, like in YouTube and like a lot of other places, usually the wrong people are usually given that position. Not all the time is it the right person in that right position of power, I guess you could say, to make those types of decisions where it comes to hiring people, when it comes to being able to give people a platform, give people an audience, give people the ability to speak their mind in order to obtain that type of stuff. That's usually what's really terrible. So what has happened to me in my own experience, with games journalists or being a games journalist, where that's really come into play. There's been times where I've spoken on things, either on an episode of JJ's One Man Podcast or one of my YouTube videos, where that's come back to me, and it's usually someone that has like some sort of issue with some like little thing. It could be something like even me talking about this type of stuff, where it'll come back and it just be like, oh, you're someone that has all this type of stuff, and they'll start making inferences or making statements that might not necessarily be true. I had one person that's very popular, and people that probably know me know who I'm referring to, had spoken on something that I had said on one of my episodes of my podcast or one of my videos, and tried to make an inference or try to make the suggestion that I was sexist. And I'm like, whoa, hold up a second. Like, there nowhere, anywhere in any of the stuff that I've done has that ever been an issue. Like, I've never been sexist towards women or to men for that matter, to anybody for that matter. And it's kind of sucks, because there's like these things that just pop up. People will just say things like that. And all of a sudden, because they have a platform, because they have an audience, automatically people try to rally behind them to support them and believe them automatically without really taking a scope of the full issue here. And that's how usually beef like that really starts. I've seen that not just happen with me, but other people as well. Various different games journalists or games media people, where I see them just getting into spats on social media over stuff like that. And it could be, and again, a number of different reasons. Something that probably said about a game, something that they were talking about or discussing, something that, was like said about them that probably might have not been true. It's really insane to me. Now, the thing about all this stuff about beef is that it never truly helps. A lot of people usually say that like all press is good press, or negative press could actually still be good press. And I don't necessarily believe that. I think that if you're someone that's trying to build a legacy, and you're someone that's trying to build influence amongst other people, especially an audience in a place like, gaming, or at least a space in an industry like gaming, I feel like, you want to really stick more to the positive stuff. You want to stick more to the stuff that people are going to get a lot out of, instead of just going out and punching up or punching towards people with your words, as opposed to doing stuff like that. You should actually be trying to actively help people, or even try to actively help some of your compatriots, some of your peers. A rising tide really kind of helps out everybody. Everybody wins when the tide rises up at the same time for everybody. Again, I'm kind of misquoting that and like messing around with the quote a little bit, but you guys get the general idea of what I'm saying. And I don't think like a lot of people so far, from what I've seen over the last like even 5 to 7 years, really have that same type of mentality. I think that only very few do. I've run across different people of various different sides of the games industry that do feel like that, or at least do think like that in some fashion. And they're very cool with people. They're not looking to like fight people. They're actually trying to actively help people, whether they're an influencer, whether they're a games journalist, whether they're just a fan, just being a part of this stuff and admiring it from a distance. They're actually not getting into beef like that. They're not actually trying to go after people or try to put down people for their own benefit. I think that's really a lot of the motivation sometimes when it comes to games journalists or games media beef. It's just really stupid. Now, at the flip side of that, it's just sometimes there are just people that are out there that are like that, and there's nothing really much you could do for them. They're really just going to make decisions based on that, and they're totally comfortable with it, and that's on them. That doesn't necessarily work for me. I'm not necessarily someone that's down with that. I'm not necessarily someone that's cool with that. Again, not referring to games journalists going after influencers or content creators. I'm talking about infighting amongst themselves, or just people that are just trying to push others out of the way in order to get ahead in the industry. To me, that's really a big issue, even though, again, there's all this other stuff that people talk about most of the time. So how do I do different things, or what do I do to avoid it? Or what do I do to kind of lead by example or make things a little bit better? Just actively just try not to get into it. Again, it happens where it comes my way, and it comes, to anybody and for any different reason, but that doesn't necessarily mean you have to engage with it. That doesn't necessarily mean you have to take it also lying down. I think that also is a big problem, where people are working so hard to try to get a job or trying to put on a good, presentation of themselves themselves and their work and their reputation and stuff, that sometimes they let themselves get walked all over all the time. I was actually talking about that on my social media recently, where I was like, when I went to E3 2019, there was just some people that were just being rude and just some people that just were not being cool. And I'm not cool with that at all. I'm not taking that. I'm not like letting that linger anymore. Like, I was openly talking about that. And a friend of mine hit me up and was like, hey, maybe you shouldn't say stuff like that because, if you want to work for one of these bigger outlets, maybe you shouldn't be saying stuff like that. I'm like, why is it bad to stick up for myself? Or why is it bad to actually say like, hey, I don't like how I've been treated by certain people. Why is it that it's a terrible thing that I have to walk on eggshells or I have to worry about not getting a job in order to kind of stick up for myself and say like, hey, this is wrong. Like, that should not be a thing. Again, that really ties into all the beef, or at least, all this other stuff. And if anything, it's really cliquey than anything else. But still, I have like these really strong opinions about that. And I feel like that's the type of stuff that needs to change. And for me personally, regardless of whatever the situation is or whatever the actual issues that come up may be, I always try to lead by example. I always try to show like, listen, I think this is like the better way to go about things, not to actively just get into it with your colleagues or do things that are terrible to your colleagues in this industry, or even just like to shy away from like, allowing someone to have their opinion or allow someone to have their stance and then just go from there. Again, this is not to really focus on the terrible aspects of things. And again, not to really focus on the whole YouTuber / games journalist / influencer type of thing. It's really just within this one section of stuff that I'm really focusing on. So anyway, I know I'm rambling on a little bit. I know that this could kind of get a little bit unfocused sometime with these episodes. It's just real talk and just real thoughts that come to my head that I feel like, just putting out there for you guys and getting a good discussion going. But let me know if you enjoyed this episode of JJ's One Man Podcast, or if you've been enjoying all the episodes I've been putting up on the YouTube channel. Leave me a comment down below in the comment section. I'm curious to see where you guys are at, and I want this to be an open forum discussion. Whenever I put out one of these episodes, I want you guys to comment. I want you guys to give your opinion. I want you guys to at least give thoughts about this different type of stuff, or even suggest different things that I could really touch on in these episodes. Of course, as always, don't forget to leave a like on this video and subscribe to my YouTube channel for more videos just like this one, my reviews, my podcast shows, my interview segments, all these different types of content that I've been giving you guys. It's all here on the YouTube channel, and I'm hoping you're enjoying all of it. And also, don't forget, I'm going to keep reminding you guys, I know it's a little bit of like shilling here and there, but again, I want this to become a thing. Make sure you guys check out my Patreon page. I have a ton of content that's exclusive to my Patreon supporters for $1, guys, literally $1 or higher. You guys get a whole bunch of exclusive content. So you don't have to pledge at like the really high tier levels that I have on there. I never really try to push that onto anybody, but for the $1 level right there, you get a ton of great content. A lot of people are always talking about how they want to look for Patreon pages or content creators that really give a lot of bang for the people's buck. And I'm telling you, there's a lot of stuff that I give you guys over on my Patreon page just for the lowest tier level, just for supporting and just being there for me. So hopefully you guys can check it out. There's links in the description box below. With that being said, I will talk to all of you guys again real soon. Peace out and stay epic, everybody.